Good morning. My name is Rabbi David Holtzberg from Chabad of Monterey. We're here to remember and celebrate the life of Mr. Stan Savitz. It is our hope that every part of this service will honor a life lived among us. It is an important day when we gather together to honor a life and mourn a death. Time stands still for just a moment as we stand here to acknowledge that someone has touched our lives, has left an imprint on our hearts, and that our souls are eternally changed. Stan left his life, this past Tuesday morning, but his spirit and his living made a difference and will continue to do as long as each of us remember him in our hearts and carry the lessons of his life with us. We are now the representatives and the ambassadors of Stan's legacy. He gave us wonderful gifts of kindness, graciousness, strength, acceptance, and love. Stan showed us how to live with challenges and struggles and how to survive. While not every moment was easy and not every memory etched in gold, in the final analysis, Stan gave to each of us every inch of what he had to offer. He never held back and always tried to give it his all. We are his future and his memories. Be kind and patient with one another and allow each one of your family to experience grief and in the way that fits them best. Washington Irving said, "There is sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weaknesses, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They are messengers of overwhelming grief and unspeakable love. Accept your tears and expressions of loss. Accept the angels in human form who come along with a word. Hug. Nowadays, a virtual hug or a memory to share. Help each other during those difficult times. The holidays, the anniversaries, the birthdays, the times when we will miss him the most. I would like Cantor Burner from Temple Bethel to chant Psalm 16. Shiviti. Thank you again. I'm now going to read Psalm 23 in Hebrew, followed by Kent Brunner, who will read it in English. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנאות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני, נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צלמוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך. דשנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Now I'm going to read Psalm 91. יושב בסתר עליון בצל שדי יתלונן, אומר לאדוני מחסי ומצודתי אלוהי אפתח בו, כי הוא יצילך מפח יכוש מדבר אבובות, בעברתו יסך לך, ותחת כנפיו תכסה צינה וסוחריה עמיתו. לא תירא מפחד לילה, מחץ יעוף יומם, מדבר באופל יהלוך, מכתב ישוט צהריים, יפול מצדך 1000 ורבבה מימינך, לאליך לא יגוש. רק בעיניך תביט, ושולמת רשעים תראה, כי אתה אדוני מחסי עליון שמת מעונך, לא תאונה אליך רעה, ונגע לא יקרב בעליך, כי מלאכיו יצווה לך לשמורך בכל דרכיך. על כפיים ישאונך, פן תגוף באבן רגליך, על שחל ופתן תדרוך, תרמוס כפיר ותנין. כי בי חשק ואפלתהו, אסגבהו כי ידע שמי, יקראני ועיניהו עמו, אנוכי בצרה. אחלצהו ואכבדהו, אורך ימים אשביעהו והריהו בשועתי. We are now going to do something that it's a Jewish custom that we do. It's called kriya. It's the rending of the garments. So according to the Torah, one of the essential elements of mourning is the performance of the kriya, rending of the outer garments by the mourners. It is designated to arouse with the mourner and to all those present the ability to express their grief, and creates an opening for the person to release the feeling of his heart. The kriya is performed by mourners prior to the burial. There is one more comforting note about the kriya, that it signifies that it is only the outer garment representing the body that has been torn. The soul of the deceased and the love that the deceased and the mourners have for each other remains and may even grow stronger over time. Now I would like to call upon Jim. You will say together with me, Baruch
Baruch,
Dayan
Dayan,
Ha'emet.
Amen.
Thank you. Is now custom that the family members and those who knew Stan, it's time to ask for forgiveness. During a long time of when a person live long time in this world is a possibility that things that was done even unintentionally, but sometimes we don't know. We don't know if we did something wrong. So it's the best is to ask for forgiveness. So I will let everyone in the audience to ask for forgiveness for take just a moment. Midor Ledor. We have with us today, from generation to generation, we have Stan's sister, Salma came in. She's going to say a few words to honor Stan.
My brother Stan and I grew up in Philadelphia, had a large conservative Jewish community. My parents were very active in this community, as well as my brother and I. One of the fondest memories was when Stan and I went to the movies once a week. At the movie, we got a small box of candy. I ate all mine, and my brother saved all of his. When I was 13 and Stan was 16, our parents moved the family to Salinas, California. We had no idea where Salinas, California was as brother and sister, but we certainly learned quickly. Salinas, which was quite the opposite of Philadelphia, and Salinas was a major culture shock to us, as it was almost a village to where we grew up. Shortly after we settled into Salinas, and Stan was called to active duty in the Navy. While he was still 17 and just as he entered into service, he was then sent overseas. Upon his return home from serving, he re-enrolled in Berkeley University, where he met his wife, Ruth Ann. I was lucky enough to go to also graduate high school and to be in the same university he was in. I cared about my brother so much that I was excited to be on the same campus that he was on. Upon his return from service, he enrolled at Berkeley University, where, as I said, we met Ruth Ann, and she became his wife. I cared about my big brother so much that I was really very excited to be in the same campus as he. We spent lots of time together, and until very recently, every single morning, I from my home and he from his would spend some time together on the
Alexa,
on Alexa, whose name I have forgotten. Every morning at 5 of 11, Stan and I would have our morning talks, which we both looked forward to every day. But very sadly, my brother Stan died this week, and I lost my very best friend. What I admired both of him, of what was his best, was his commitment to Judaism throughout his life, as well as his consistency in always putting everyone else first in life. I will miss him dearly.
That was beautiful.
We're now going to the next generation. I'd like to call upon the nephew, Bob Horowitz, to say a few words.
Oh, it's the same one. Yeah. Okay, the same place. There you go. You need to unmute. You ask him to unmute.
Could you unmute yourself, Bob?
Now I'm okay. Anyway, I was saying last week was a very sad day in our family to lose my uncle and to at the same time see my mom lose, as she said, someone as close friend, and I think friend more than just the obligatory brother or sister relationship. That is true. They did talk every day, and to get in a plug for Amazon, not that they need one, the Echo Show that they both used every single day to communicate back and forth added a good amount of days, I think, to both of their lives and to their relationship. When I think back of my uncle, what clearly jumps out at me is somebody that had a rudder, somebody that totally knew exactly who he was, someone that lived his life according to that, that he had a sense of humor. Often when a bunch of people get together, you'll hear stories, you'll learn a lot of new things about somebody. So last night, when we all got together to share with the rabbi and the cantor a lot about my uncle, what was, I think, really beautiful and was great is that it wasn't the new stuff that we learned. It was that everybody had experienced the same thing. They all experienced his sense of humor, his ethical rudder, that he his wit in general, and his friends, and how he touched so many people. I had the the privilege of my mom talking about their roots in Philadelphia, of spending time with my mom and my late stepfather Ralph and Uncle Stan in Philadelphia and in New York, as he went back to his roots for the first time since he had left when he was 16. And I know Jim and I have often talked, and I know that it would have been great had he been able to go to Israel. That didn't happen, but at least to go back to his homeland, of the homeland where he was born, was terrific. The last couple weeks, this was somebody whose body gave out. This is not somebody's. This is not somebody whose mind gave out. He was witty and funny to the end. He was excited about his avocado investment going public, and that was just a couple months ago. And he will be sorely missed. And there's so many great lessons that we have learned from him and we will carry forward into the future.
Now we're going to go to the next generation. I'd like to call upon the granddaughter, Jennifer.
My grandpa touched many lives as a devoted husband, a father and grandfather, a brother, an uncle, and a friend. From his laugh, you could hear a mile away to his emphatic greeting with a big, "How are ya?" He filled the room with his presence. It was a presence that didn't go unnoticed even by those first meeting him. My husband, Joey, and I were recently reminiscing about Joey's first visit to Salinas a few years ago. After a little small talk over a meal, my grandpa requested that Joey actually be the one to drive his car home. Joey said he was terrified the whole drive, but got the wink of approval, and the rest was history. And they were great friends throughout the rest of his life. No matter how you came to know my grandpa, something that I'm sure stands out is his humor. He was somehow able to nail all ends of the humor spectrum, from goofy dad jokes to clever sarcasm. One of our longstanding jokes was his famous marinara sauce we got to eat each time we'd visit. Hint, it was from a jar. Each year, he would add an hour to the time his sauce was supposedly simmering and waiting for us, to the point he'd claim to be preparing it before we even left Los Angeles to drive to Salinas. The sparkle of his humor was unwavering, even in the last days of his life. Most importantly, my grandpa was generous in the way he cared for his family and friends. I will be forever appreciative of the way he cheered me on throughout my medical training and other big life milestones. While he will be missed dearly, I take comfort in knowing that my grandpa lived a rich, full life and passed peacefully. Rather than feel like I'm losing him, I hope to take pieces of him with me. Each time I laugh at a corny joke, ask someone how they are and really mean it, or savor a few more minutes of a good meal with good company. I love you, Grandpa.
Last but not least, from the family members, I'd like to call upon Ariel.
My grandpa was a fairly private person who never wanted to burden anyone. He was a very intelligent and charismatic businessman who was generous with everyone he encountered and cared deeply for his family. His devotion to my granny was admirable and inspirational. I remember one year he came down to visit us when I was pretty young, and he told this story of how our family was long lost Russian royalty. He had me completely convinced I was a Russian princess, and he treated my sister and I as such when we would visit him. We would take a trip to the outlet mall a couple hours away. He would give us each some money and told us to spend it frivolously, which is something I've continued to practice and will happily pass on to future generations. As my sister and I grew up, I saw my grandpa grow as a person as well. I think as we matured and became more outgoing in conversations, he was a bit astounded at times by some of our responses. I like to think he was impressed even if he didn't agree. In many ways, he adapted to the changes in society. He was even able to navigate new generation iPhones and use emojis, a humble brag I always shared with friends when they talked about their parents' struggle with technology. He would always joke about how he was a young guy, even younger than my dad, which he was definitely young at heart, in mind, and spirit. In times of peace and quiet, he would always hum delicately to a beat, which I found to be oddly comforting, and I have caught myself doing when listening to music and working, sometimes in normal office environments that my coworkers have appreciated as free amusement. The stories from his life and his infectious personality will continue to live on. I love you, Grandpa.
Thank you to all the family members for very moving words. We gathered today to reflect on the life of Stan Savitz, Shmuel ben Natan. When we are called to pay respect to a life, to the beauty that he brought to the world, to those he loved and those who loved them, we cannot put into a few moments and sentences all that we feel. We also have difficulty coming to terms with his mortality and with the reality of his passing. Our rabbis, based on the Torah verse, book of the Deuteronomy, which it says, Ki ahadam hetz asadeh, compare a man to a tree, and teach us. We should take a lesson from the world of flora, which surrounds us. By Jewish tradition, in a few weeks, we are going to celebrate Tu B'Shvat, the new year for the trees. And while it may seem strange to observe this day in midwinter, it is precisely the tree's dormancy which holds a lesson for us gathered here today. When looking at a tree in winter, we cannot see any life or growth. It is only months later we realize that the dormant season is when the tree is storing nutrients for the coming time of growth and beauty of giving fruit and shade. So too, a life that passes is still reflected in the values passed along to children and future generations. It is our duty to live our lives in a way that he taught with values that he cherished and personified. In this way, Stan lives on in us with days. Stan's lives on his in us for days and years to come. His love for his faith, his devotion to Bet Knesset, this all energizes us in our daily lives. His smile, laughter, and warmth are contagious and will hopefully echo in our own generosity of spirit as we follow his example in making this world a better and more beautiful place than how we found it. Our rabbis of the Talmud relate a parable of someone walking into the desert, hungry, thirsty, and tired. Miraculously, he chances upon an oasis with a beautiful fruit-bearing tree and flowing stream nearby. The travelers eats of the fruit, drinks of the stream, and rest in the tree's shade. Getting up, refreshed and invigorated, he turns to the tree, asking, "How should I bless you?" Answering his own question, he offers a blessing and prayer that all your seeds shall grow to strong trees as you are. In this week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayechi, we read about the passing of our forefather Jacob. Rashi, commentator on the Torah, states, Yaakov lo met, ma zaro b'chaim afu b'chaim. Jacob never died. Just as his children are alive, so is he alive. When we carry on the legacy of the departed, we are keeping him alive. He lives on with every single one of us through our actions and good deeds. We take solace in knowing that Shmuel ben Natan's goodness is carried forward in the beautiful family he left behind. His dear son Jim and wife Diane, his sister Salma, and of course also his lovely grandchildren Jennifer and Ariel. Te'en nafsho tzrua b'tzora chaim. May the soul of Shmuel ben Natan be bound with eternal life with the Almighty. Now I would like to call upon Kenter Brunner to say a few words.
I want to thank everyone who helped with planning the services of remembrance for Stan in this difficult time. Keeping everyone safe, we are doing what Stan would have wanted. We do best homage to the ones that leave this earth before us when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. In the words of Stan's best friend, Leah Winter, Stan was a living saint. She asked Stan once, was there anything about his life he would have changed? And he said only one thing, and that would have been Ruth Ann's help. Leah, Arthur, and Stan every single day since last March. Before then, the three of them would meet for breakfast every Saturday and have dinner together on Sunday nights. Wednesday lunches were reserved for mostly Arthur and Stan, but sometimes they would invite me or Leah. Leah was needed because she had the Herculean strength to load Stan's walker in and out of the car. One of their favorite meals was eggplant parmesan at the Olive Garden. When Arthur and Stan met on Wednesday, they had a running $2 bet on whether it was up or down. They both said they thought they lost a lot of money to each other over the years. Arthur would pay Stan the $2 in pennies, and one day Arthur glued them all together. Arthur said it was like having lunch with the mayor. People would stop by their table and say hi. More than one of the Temple Bethel congregants told me not only how fun-loving and good-hearted Stan was, but also how kind and wise. Bob Cassavan showed me a wonderful photo of him and Stan in front of a sign for the American Heart Association. They would procure a truckload of donated produce, and the net proceeds would go to the AHA. Bob said Stan was quite the mentor to him. Stan was also a mentor and helper to another congregant, I'm going to call him Shlomo, who was experiencing a lot of pressure from business associates who did not want him setting up shop in their neck of the woods. The business owners asked Shlomo out to lunch, and Shlomo was terrified. He was even shaking. He didn't know who to call or who to talk to, so he went to seek Stan's advice. And Stan said, kill them with kindness, be extra nice, and they'll be so confused by your calm demeanor that you will scare them. It worked. And Stan may have inherited this wisdom from his mother, because there is another story along the same lines about his mother. Mrs. Savitz lived in a Salinas neighborhood that prided itself on Christmas decorations and the like. They asked Mrs. Savitz about the kinds of decorations she had in mind for her house for Christmas. And she replied, I'm not going to decorate our house, but would you please come over for coffee and tea? She made friends instead of enemies and was gracious and hospitable. Ruth Ann and Stan were the same way when they had the open house after Rosh Hashanah afternoon services every year. Another congregant said that Stan was the best temple president we ever had. He served from 1973 to 1977. I myself called him more than once asking his advice about fundraising and membership. Stan had a lot of great ideas for temple fundraisers. One of them was a group of fellows who called themselves the Singing Nuns. That's N-O-N-E-S. They sang parodies on well-known songs and made people laugh until they fell out of their chairs. Stan would wear a cheerleading outfit and a wig. Lynn Perlman, who told me this story, used to volunteer with Stan at the Steinbeck Center. Lynn said Stan never met a person who didn't like him. He was such a good friend to all. Thank you, Stan, for your smile and the twinkle in your eye. And thank you, Stan, for touching our lives with your warmth, humor, and love. I hope you are smiling with Ruth Ann now.
Enter Brunner. Now we got one more Psalms, which this Psalms is very special to Stan, because this Psalm, it's Psalm 99, which actually has Stan's Hebrew name, Shmuel. I should say. אדוני מלך ירגזו עמים, יושב כרובים תנות הארץ. אדוני בציון גדול ורם הוא על כל העמים. ירדו שמך גדול ונורא קדוש הוא. ועוז מלך משפט אוהב, אתה כוננת משרים, משפט וצדקה ביעקב אתה עשית. רוממו אדוני השתחוו לאדום רגליו קדוש הוא. משה ואהרון בכהניו ושמואל בקוראי שמו. קוראים אל אדוני והוא יענם, בעמוד ענן ידבר עליהם, שמרו עדותיו וחוק נתן למו. אדוני אלוהינו אתה עניתם, אל נושא היית להם ונוקם על עלילותם. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו. I'm going to have to enter chanted in. In English. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon his wings of the Shekhinah, divine presence, in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shines as the resplendence of the firmament, to the soul of Shmuel ben Natan, who has gone to his supernal world. Charity has been donated in his remembrance of all. Place of rest be in Gan Eden. Therefore, may the of his wings forever the bound of life. The Lord is his heritage. May he rest, resting place in peace. And let us say, Amen. this concludes our service. We are now going to together with Jim and Canterbrunner, we're going to the cemetery. Whoever wants to pay a Shiva call. There is information on the email that was sent. There is the time. There's a time slot that you could reach Jim and Salma as well. Okay, you could contact Salma directly and Jim as well. And any other announcement? Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. May we meet in